Ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome you to the Beit El Institution's Elections webinar. My name is Baruch Gordon. I'm Director of Development at Beit El Institutions, and next to me is Sharona Eshet-Kohen.
Hi.
So Sharona also lectures on campuses about Israel activism. And today, we know a lot of people have signed up, and we're seeing a lot of people joining as we talk to get a little information about the upcoming elections this Tuesday. And we want to welcome all of you. And I think first what we're going to do is let Sharona talk about some of the technicalities of how this webinar works, how you can submit questions, because in about 45 minutes or an hour, we're going to be joined by former member of Knesset, Ketzaleh. That's Yaakov Katz with some amazing analysis. And Sharona, why don't you tell us about how the technical points of this webinar work?
Sure. Okay. So on the left side of the screen, you should see us right now. And on the right side, there's a chat. Some people have already posted some things. You'll see that at the bottom of that chat, there's a text box that says type your message. You can type your message and everyone will see it. Right above that on the right side, it says chat. If you press the 3 dots right next to chat, you can send something that says send as question. And that'll highlight your comment to us to let us know that it's specifically a question, so we can make sure to see it and address it during the Q&A. Okay. So before we get started, we're curious about the population who decided to join. So if you can, in the chat, and also as a good practice run, if you can just type in what city you're from, so we can see how global this is.
Give us city and state or city and country, because we may not recognize all the cities.
Right.
So ladies and gentlemen, again, on the right side of the screen, you have a chat button. There's 3 dots there. Click on that and just write in where you're from. So
okay, Jerusalem.
Right, we see Jerusalem here.
Close to us.
What is that?
Spain.
How do you pronounce that? Sevilla, Spain.
Sevilla.
Wow. Sevilla, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joan.
What is that? Michigan, West Bloomfield, Michigan. Okay. Beit Shemesh.
I'm seeing Ashkelon.
Hindi.
Where is Hindi? Oh, that's her
That
name.
looks like a name.
Okay, Hindi's from Hindi. From the Hindus. Great. More from Jerusalem, from Beit El. That's great. We're from all over the world. Other countries are coming in, and we're going to move on, I think.
Okay. So we're going to get started with the presentation. Okay.
Okay, so again, welcome to How to Be an Israeli Elections Expert Without Spending Hours Reading the News. And I'm going to turn my webcam off. So again, this is aimed at all of you who can just become experts very quickly in this webinar. We think we'll be on for an hour, hour and a half, maybe a little more if there's a lot of questions. I've already introduced myself. Again, those who are joining, a lot have joined in the last 10 minutes. I'm Baruch Gordon from Beit El, and a political activist, an assistant to former member of Knesset Katz, and have been in the Knesset often assisting him. So we're going to get on with what we're doing. And again, I have Sharona next to me, who lectures on campuses about Israel activism and is our online media director at Beit El Institutions. Sharona.
Okay, so just before we start, if you could make sure that you are able to pay full attention to this great material that we're going to offer you today, if you could turn off your phones or put them on silent and close the other tabs on your computer. And as we mentioned in the emails going out to you, to have a pen and paper next to you, because you're definitely going to want to take notes. There's going to be a lot of interesting but technical facts and figures we're going to be giving you, so it'll be helpful if you have something to write it down with. If you do use Twitter and you'd like to tweet about this session, please use the hashtag #LiveIsraelElectsInfo. And if you don't have Twitter or don't know what this means, don't worry about it. It doesn't make a difference.
So later in this broadcast, we're going to have former Knesset member Yaakov Ketzaleh Katz with some amazing analysis. I just want to pitch those of you who have questions already for Ketzaleh. You can go ahead and write them. If Ketzaleh knows you, please do include your name, because we'll read your name to him as we present the question to him. I just want you to know Ketzaleh's analysis is very, very deeply sought after by many politicians. I'm his assistant, and we've often met with existing politicians who call him in for consultations and ask his advice on certain things. And I can maybe elaborate on that more. But go ahead. That'll be later in this broadcast. In about 45 minutes or an hour, he'll join us. And in the meantime, please do ask questions about your questions about the elections. Okay, so if you've ever supported like a major party in the elections, you know you lean to the left and you support the Labour Party or the Gantz Party, or you lean to the right and you support the Likud Party, but you never really know what all the multiple parties mean, what the different parties, what their platforms are and what they support. So if you're one of those people, or if you want to understand the Israeli elections process, you're interested in the elections, but you've never really felt confident enough to join a discussion about how they work, we're going to help you get through that this evening.
Tell us in the chat what your biggest issue is with regards to the election, what you're hoping to learn today, and that will be also helpful to us in terms of guiding this presentation.
Absolutely. So if you have specific questions, go to the chat. Let's see.
Okay.
Today we're going to be covering the difference between the American voting system and the Israeli voting system. They're starkly different. We're going to go run through the party platforms. We're going to show some of the statements of politicians, and you know what that means, a statement by a politician. And it shows how sometimes it's not exactly what they say is what they mean. And of course, which parties support Judea and Samaria. We are broadcasting from the West Bank, also known as Judea and Samaria. We do support retaining all areas of the land of Israel for the Jewish people, and we'll talk about which parties support that.
Okay, so let's get started.
So the Knesset is a multi-party system, unlike the United States. A multi-party system means that when I go to vote, well, first of all, there's 120 seats in the Knesset, and they're divided amongst multiple parties. So when I go to vote, if you look at bullet point number 3 below, I'm voting for a party and not for people. Now, in the United States, when I go to vote for president, I'm putting in a ballot for either Trump or Hillary or Bernie Sanders or whoever. I'm voting for a person. And later, if I have a second ballot and I'm voting for my congressman from my district or a senator from my state, I'm voting for a person. I'm not putting down a ballot that says Republican Party or Democrat Party. That's what you all are used to, those of you in the United States at least, and that's what most people get confused about Israel. Because in Israel, there's only one ballot in the elections. We don't have separate elections for the parliament, right? The House of Representatives, and separate elections for the prime minister. No, it's all done in one ballot. By voting for a party, I'm saying this party represents my ideological leaning, and the person who's number one in the party, if that party gets the most votes or has the best chances to form a coalition of a majority of Knesset seats, which would be 61 Knesset seats, then that party is going to become, the head of that party will become prime minister, and he'll become the ruling party of the coalition. You have to bring together other small parties to form that 61-person majority.
So the way that the seat allocation works, the way that the government actually figures out which candidates get seats is parties create lists of candidates in order, and they win a certain number of seats depending on the proportion of the percentage of votes, of national votes they get. So then here we'll show you an example. For example, United Torah Judaism, let's say that they win 7 seats. So they have a very long list of candidates. Here you'll see the first 30. If they win 7 seats worth of votes, then the first 7 people you'll see is in red, they will become Knesset members.
Every party has to submit 45 days before the elections a list of 120 members that represent their party, just in case they get all the votes, which is not a likelihood. But every party submits their list. It has to be closed 45 days before the elections. So they all did that. They submitted their lists. And depending on the percentage of votes that they get, that dictates how many seats they'll have in the Knesset. I just want to mention it's great that you guys are writing in the chat. I'm seeing some very good questions coming in, and we're going to get to all of that. The analysis questions, like people are asking here about Feigelin's metamorphosis, we're going to save that for Ketzaleh. But some of the informational things about party platforms that I'm seeing Jeanette is asking, we'll get to that later on in this broadcast, Sharona and I. So just summing up, when you have multi-party lists, you've got to know the people on the list, because not just the party and the political leaning, but there may be a specific person. For example, I know a woman who told me that she has a friend, a very close friend, who's number 32, I think, on the Likud list. So even though her ideological leanings are more towards like the National Religious Party, which right now in this election is called the United Right Party, or she may be closely aligned with some of the more right-wing parties. She's voting the Likud because she wants this specific friend to get in, and she's encouraging her friends to vote Likud. That's just an example. You got to know the candidates. There may be a specific candidate you like or don't like, and that might dictate the list that you vote for or don't vote for. Now, here's a huge point that everybody here must understand regarding the Israeli elections, and that's the minimum threshold. Not every party that wins enough seats to get a single seat will get in. So in the last election, it was about 34,000 votes constituted a Knesset seat. So you would think that if someone got 35,000 votes, boom, they're in. They've got a single Knesset seat. Just like back in the 1980s, there were parties that were one seat in the Knesset. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that has changed. The Knesset, the parliament, has passed a law saying there's a minimum threshold of 3.25% of the total vote to get into the Knesset. That's about 4 Knesset seats. So if a party only has enough, let's say they get 100,000 votes, they should have 3 people in the Knesset. No, they'll have 0. They won't get in. There's a minimum threshold. And we'll talk about what happens to those votes that seem to be lost. People are asking if we can get the PowerPoint, Sharona. So Sharona's answering, yeah. So first of all, there's 2 types of votes that, so to speak, go to waste. Okay, 2 types of votes that, so to speak, go to waste. And if we're looking at this slide now, there are surplus votes in each party. So let's say that it's exactly 34,000 votes, as in the last Knesset, to get a single seat. So if a party gets what would it be, 102,000 Knesset seats votes for their, they would have exactly 3 Knesset seats. Well, no, they would lose. All of those would go. If there's surplus votes, let's say a party got 6 seats, and now they have another 10,000 votes that are left over. What happens to those surplus votes? We'll talk about that in a second, and we'll talk about what happens to the votes that go to waste.
I saw that someone named Voter just asked a question. If we don't answer your question sufficiently in the next couple slides, let us know again, but I think we're going to cover it.
Okay.
Okay.
So step 1 is the surplus agreements. Now that means that different parties before the election say, like the Likud and the United Right. The United Right is basically the National Religious Party together with Otzma Yehudit, the students of Rabbi Kahana. So that United Right, they formed a surplus agreement with the Likud saying that if both of us get a certain amount of seats, let's say, for example, the Likud gets 32 seats and the United Right gets 7 seats, and there's leftover votes. So the United Right has 30,000 votes left over towards an 8th seat, and the Likud has 5,000 votes towards a 33rd seat. So they would have an agreement saying, we, the Likud, who are further away from the next seat, our votes, surplus votes, go to you to help you get another seat. Meaning, usually these surplus agreements are made between parties that are ideologically close to one another. So on the left, the Labor Party has signed a surplus agreement with Meretz, and on the right, the Likud has signed such an agreement with the United Right. So here we have an example from this. In this, by the way, these slides were prepared by Sharona, our online media director. And if you're joining us, and a lot of people have joined, my name is Baruch Gordon from Bethel Institutions, and next to me is Sharona, and we're running through the system. And right now we're talking about surplus agreements between parties. So here we have an example of a surplus agreement. If you look at those blue numbers, 34,000 seats is what it takes to get a Knesset seat, at least in the last elections. So if the Likud has 8,000 seats left over, and you see 26,000 seats are left over for the United Right, so boom, the one that has more would take the less. Those 8,000 would go over to the United Right, and boom, they would have exactly 34, and they would get that the United Right would get an 8th seat. So that's how that works. The step 2 is allocation of votes that don't meet the minimum threshold. What happens to those votes? So this gets a little bit complicated. And if you don't understand it, it doesn't matter that much, because you're going to hear the results of the elections and they'll do this work for you. But here's what actually
Oh,
No.
here, click on it.
Okay. Got the sound back now. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think we have the sound back now. So, this, what we're talking about now, let's see here. Do we have the sound back?
Yes.
It's back.
Back now.
So we're talking about the votes that don't meet the minimum threshold. If someone votes for the Lieberman party, which right now is polling around the minimum threshold, and they got only 100,000 votes, and they don't get into the Knesset because they don't have that 3.25% that's necessary to get into the Knesset, what happens to those 100,000 votes? So what happens is they go into a pool, and after the elections, they see which party of all the parties on the right and the left is closest to the next Knesset seat. Let's say the Arab party is missing only 8,000 votes to the next Knesset seat. They take 8,000 of those votes, boom, put them over to the Arab party, and they get another Knesset seat. And then they say, who's the next party that's the next closest? So let's say the Likud is missing 12,000 votes to their next Knesset seat. They distribute 12,000 of those votes over to the Likud. So we distributed 8 and 12. There's another 80,000 votes that went to waste here that are to be distributed. Basically, they take the parties that are closest to getting the next Knesset seat and distribute it to them, whether it be on the right or the left. Let's move on to the next slide. So understanding this minimum threshold is extremely important, because if you're voting for a party that's polling around the minimum threshold, whoa, your vote may become a total wild card. You may be like helping an Arab party to get in, or the Meretz extreme left party to get in, or the United, whatever, a right-wing party. It's just completely out of your control anymore. Whereas if you vote for a party that seems to be polling a little higher and is for sure going to get in, then you're sure that your vote will be supporting the type of party that you want to get into. And also the agreements between the parties. We talked beforehand about these surplus agreements. So you know that your vote, if it's left over for the Likud, or let's say you're leaning to the left and you vote for the Labor Party, if you have an extra vote there, it may go help to get Meretz in another seat because they signed a surplus agreement. Not all parties sign, but some do. Okay, so we said that 45 days before the elections, you have to submit your list. And we see here that there's parties that came together before that 45-day cutoff date to form together parties. So let's look at the top. We have the Blue and White Party. Now, they came together, these three parties, because they wanted to build up a mass that would be similar to the Likud, so they may be able to take the leadership of the country. If the Likud gets 32 seats and they get 30 or 33 seats, then the president may say to them, hey, you're very close and you seem to have better chances to form a coalition, we're going to give it to you. The other examples below are examples of parties. Let's look at the next one down, the Union of Right-Wing Parties. Just so you know, and I'm happy to say it, I am voting for the Union of Right-Wing Parties because the Jewish Home Party and the Tekuma Party, they best represent my values. So they formed together with Otzma Yehudit. Why? Why form together? They're a little different. Because if they were polling under the minimum threshold, the Jewish Home was polling under the minimum threshold, the Tekuma Party was polling under the minimum threshold, and the Otzma Yehudit Party was polling at about 3 seats. None of them had enough to get in, so they formed together. They formed this alliance of one list so that they could all for sure get in. Now, this is an important case, the Union of Right-Wing Parties, because the Jewish Home and Tekuma are tied together. But they said to Otzma Yehudit, which again is Itamar Ben-Gvir, it was Michael Ben-Ari who was disqualified, and they're basically the students of Rav Meir Kahana. The Jewish Home and Tekuma said to them, listen, let's come together technically, a technical alliance, and right after the elections, we're going to split apart, meaning you, the representatives of the Otzma Yehudit, won't be obligated to our party discipline. So here you have the third one down, are Arab parties that came together because they were polling under the minimum threshold and united toward Judaism as well. So again, just to sum up, why are joint lists important? We just went through some of them. Because you may have a faction. Let's say you're a freak of the Otzma Yehudit Party. You think that they speak the truth and only they speak the truth and you want to vote for them. So you have to know that their representative is number 7 on this joint list. And that's why we have the bullet point number 3 down here. Know where your favorite candidates are situated, because this United Right Wing, they're polling at around 6, 7, 8 seats. So if you say, wow, I want to be sure that he gets in, I'm going to vote for that party because I'm a freak. I'm a student I believe in Itamar Ben-Gvir and all the others are just phonies. That's what some of my friends say. or whatever. So it's important to know where your candidates are situated.
And on the other hand, if they're very low on the list, let's say United Right was polling at 5 and he was at 7 and it was unlikely he'd get in, then you might choose to vote for a different party altogether or not vote at all.
Exactly, right. If they were polling around 4 or 5 and your candidate really didn't have much chance of getting in, that's a good point, Sharona. Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, so
that's right. Some of this, right. And Sharona made a point in the chat here that the surplus agreements are only applicable to parties that pass the minimum threshold. So if 2 parties sign a surplus agreement and one of those parties doesn't pass the minimum threshold, they're out. They're out. And parties that David is asking, what happens to parties that have don't have surplus agreements? What happens to those votes? So those votes become wild cards.
They're allocated the same way as the votes that for parties that don't pass the threshold.
Okay, so we're looking at a new slide. Once we have the 120 Knesset seats, meaning the parties that got their seats, the surplus agreements have been calculated, and one of those parties got an extra seat maybe, and now the leftover seats, those leftover seats and parties that didn't pass the minimum threshold are distributed to the parties that were closest to getting another seat. Total out of wild random fashion. It could be on the left, it could be on the right. So now we have 120 seats. Who's going to be the prime minister? Who's going to be the person to put together the government?
Okay, so the way it works is every party is allowed to submit recommendations to the president of party leaders. It doesn't even necessarily have to be their party leader, just of party leaders. Then the president decides to task one of these party leaders with the task of forming a government. Now, there's a requirement that the government has to constitute 61 seats, which is a majority of the 120 seats. So even the largest party, even if Likud wins 31 seats, they're going to have to join with smaller parties to form a coalition of at least 61 seats. So we're going to see how that affects everything.
Right. So what happens is the president calls in the head of each party and says, who do you recommend? Who do you align with to be the person you think should be the prime minister? And all of them will say one of the 2 bigger parties, because the 2 biggest parties are going to be divided against each other. We already know from the polls in this election, the 2 biggest parties are the Likud and the Blue and White Party, which is the Gantz-Lapid party. So if they call in the Meretz party, which is extreme left, when I say extreme, I'm not calling people extremists. I'm just saying on the layout of the map, they're the extreme. So they're going to say, we support Gantz to be our candidate. We would align with him and we wouldn't align with the Likud. And then the Nasi, the president of the country, that's Ruby Rivlin, once he's interviewed each and every one of these people, that usually takes a few days, he makes the decision. He says, wow, this person, let's say it's Netanyahu, he may have gotten fewer votes, fewer seats than the Blue and White Party, but he has better chances of forming a minimum of a 61-party coalition because more parties are recommending him. And, it doesn't necessarily mean that the person that got the most seats is the one that gets the task of forming the coalition.
So this next slide is probably one of the most important with regards to voter strategy. This concept of creating a coalition for the government is probably one of the things that affects voter strategy the most. Specifically, the need to join with other parties in order to form a coalition means that even voting for a major party, even a major party will have to join with smaller parties. So when the president considers which party leader should form a government, he doesn't just consider the size of how many seats that specific party won, but he also considers the size of the political bloc. And we'll show you a real life example in the next slide. But I just want to touch really quickly on this option of the unity government. So the president has the option of recommending a unity government. He can't force it. Basically what that is the 2 largest parties come together and kind of share the premiership. They rotate, the party leaders rotate being prime minister, and they essentially, between the 2 of them, between the 2 parties, control the Knesset. That happened
in the 1988 elections between Shamir and Peres. They had a rotation. Peres was ruled from 1988 to 1990, and Shamir ruled from 1990 to 1992. So yeah, this is just going back on this. This is a huge concept because a lot of people in America tell me, well, I'm very concerned. I want Bibi to get in. I don't want these other guys to get in. So he thinks that you have to vote for Bibi's party in order for Bibi to get in. And it's totally untrue. You have to vote for either Bibi's party or a natural ally of Bibi Like, let's name some of those right-wing parties. That would be the United Right Party, which is basically the religious Zionist party, or Bennett and Shaked's party, which is the New Right Party, or Zehut. Zehut is kind of a wild card. We'll come back to that. Yisrael Beitenu, Shas, United Torah Judaism. All of these are parties that are natural allies of the Likud. There's room to argue about that, and we can discuss that with Ketzaleh later.
So we'll just here are two great examples of how this could play out in reality. So let's say blue and white wins more seats than Likud, but the other right-wing parties get a lot of votes. They get 36 votes altogether. So Likud in this case would actually have a better chance of forming a government because they would have 36 plus 28, which is well over 61 seats that they need to form a coalition, even though blue and white won more seats. In this example, however, if fewer right-wing parties, if right-wing parties get fewer votes and Likud and blue and white both do fairly well, then they could go with a unity government, and Likud and blue and white could share the premiership together.
Or
even if Likud got more votes.
Or in a case like that, the president may say to blue and white, you seem to have better chances of forming a coalition. I'm going to give you that first privilege. By the way, if someone is asking if this will be available afterwards, and our plans are, this is a new software for us, this broadcast. So we hope it'll be recorded correctly and up and available, and all of you will get the link to it. Great.
Okay, so just an example of how, another example of how this can play out. This actually happened in 2009. The center-left party, the center-left party, Kadima, which was led by Tzipi Livni, actually won more seats than Likud. But at the time, the right-wing bloc was more powerful, so the then president Shimon Peres tasked Likud, led by Bibi, of forming the government, even though Tzipi Livni actually won more seats.
Right, she had one more seat than Bibi, but Bibi got the task of forming the government and successfully did so. Okay, so there are time limits. That means that once the president says to Netanyahu or to Gantz, you have the task of forming a government, go start talking to other parties to do that, to get a majority coalition of at least 61 seats. He has 42 days, as you can see in this slide. And if after those 42 days, let's say the person comes back to the president and says, I was not successful. The conditions are so hard, I could not negotiate agreements. They're demanding too much, and I was not successful in doing it. The president would then give the second biggest party, the person with the second most chances, to formulate that government. And a third candidate, if he doesn't succeed,
I'm not sure that's ever happened.
Right, has 14 days. Probably ain't going to happen.
And if that did happen and that candidate also failed, the Knesset would be dispersed and new elections would be held.
Just in between slides here, so we have someone asking when they lower or raise the minimum threshold, how does that affect the government? Well, we had many years in which there really was no minimum threshold. You just had to get one seat, and you had so many parties, so many negotiations, and sometimes it was the government was just like a narrow majority of 61 or 62, and any Sam from the street, like one Knesset member, could sort of put a pistol to the head of the government and say, if you don't do this demand that I have, I'm going to bolt the coalition, bring down the government, and there'll be new elections. It was not a good situation. So in order to force the parties to come together and have larger blocks of parties and less maneuvering and pressure on the prime minister, so that's the good thing about having a higher minimum threshold. I
think a good way it's been described to me is it's a push and pull between efficiency and democracy, because the lower the threshold, the more people can be specific about voting who they want them to be represented by, but it makes the government much less efficient.
Yeah, Ronald is asking the difference between a prime minister and president. So, like in England, you have the king, and then you have the person who's actually the prime minister of the country. In Israel, the prime minister is the head of the government. He makes the policy. He leads. The president is the head of state, the ceremonial head of state. He's neutral in politics. So he just has this official task of determining who will be the next prime minister and have the task of forming the government. So
okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So after the prime minister designate forms a government, he creates a coalition. That coalition has to report to the Knesset its basic policies, which parties are actually in the coalition, who's going to get which portfolio in the cabinet, which has all been negotiated during the forming of the coalition. And then the Knesset has to confirm the coalition in an investiture vote. And then after that happens, the prime minister and the new government are sworn into office.
Perfect.
Okay, so now
who were the main players in the 2019 elections? Ladies and gentlemen, do we have a drum roll? Da, da, da. So let's look at some of these parties and their basic platforms. The Likud is known; they're considered the large bloc, the right, a right-wing party that's sort of a moderate right wing. They're polling at 28 seats. They've actually gone up in just the most recent polls to 30, 31, and some polls even 32 seats. Economically, they're conservatives. Regarding the conflict, they want to maintain all parts of the land, though the Likud is capable of giving away small parts of the land to the Arabs to try and broker some sort of agreement. They did that in Hebron. They gave away Hebron. They've done that in the past. They're sort of moderate right. And the two-state solution, Netanyahu has officially come out in his famous Bar-Ilan speech in favor of a two-state solution, but he's never really fervently acted upon that. And just in the recent days, he said that he's actually against it. Go ahead. You want to do this one?
You get it.
So in terms of reading between the lines, so Netanyahu right now is saying, for example, that he will annex part of Judea and Samaria. That's his statements in the press. He's saying, I will annex part of Judea and Samaria. Why is he saying that? Because Bennett is to his right and has a threat upon, threatens the prime minister. Bennett is saying we have to annex Area C, meaning annex the Jewish towns and villages of Judea and Samaria, known as the Jewish settlements of the West Bank, make them officially part of Israel, not a military rule. And Bibi was threatened by that, so he's saying now, well, I'll do that too. But in actuality, Bibi has been in rule in the government for 13 years and has never done that. So me, as a reader of the news, I'm saying one thing is for sure. If a person has done something in the past, it's likely that he'll continue with the same policy. If he hasn't, it's likely that he won't. So even though Bibi may be making statements 3 days before the elections, I'm not sure if we can rely upon that specific statement for him. And the same on the left. There's plenty of examples when, you know, it's like when they speak to a certain audience, they say certain things. Let's move on. So Kahol Lavan is the next, the big party on the left. It was formed by 3 chiefs of staff. The leader of them is Benny Gantz, and Lapid also is there. Now, they made a coalition, not a coalition agreement, a party agreement between them that Lapid and Gantz, they'll have a rotation government. If they win the elections and they become the next prime ministers, it won't be Gantz who's prime minister 4 years. He'll be in for a certain period of time, I think just over 2 years, and Lapid will take over after that. That's the only way they could reach that agreement to get this huge block. They're polling at 30 seats. So socially, they're more to the left. They're more socialist. In the conflict, they're more willing to negotiate with the Arabs to appease them. They're in favor of appeasement. And security-wise, they are chiefs of staff. They do understand security, but their security approach is one much more of appeasement. They believe in a diplomacy through sheer might. Whereas the party, there is a solution for sheer might. Here's reading between the lines. So, Sharona.
Okay, so the blue and white platform was very clear at first that there'll be no second disengagement to the disengagement from Gaza. Very, very strongly implying that Jews would not be removed from Judea and Samaria. However, Gantz in the press later on gave several quotes about having to learn from the disengagement from Gaza and how to do it in a less painful way or in a more effective way, implying that that he would consider removing Jews from Judea and Samaria, but still continuing to keep it very vague.
Excellent. So that's an excellent example. And we're basically saying that politicians, when they open their mouths 3 days before the elections, you have to take their statements with a grain of salt. Are they just trying to draw elections from some of those swing votes that people haven't decided or not?
So someone, we lost sound for a minute and someone asked to repeat about Gantz.
Yeah, so just in general about Gantz, he was a chief of staff. He leans to the left. He leans towards he says that a diplomatic solution is what we have to do. Today, he came out in an interview saying, he said, we have to renew the peace process. We have to renew the negotiations. We have to vigorously pursue a diplomatic process to bring a solution to the conflict and keep our military might just to make sure that we don't get harmed in the meantime. So he's in favor of a diplomatic process. Oh, the Labor Party. Now we're looking at the Labor Party. Avi Gabai, who is a Sephardic leader of the Labor Party. That is a very strange thing. Rarely do we see a Sephardic leader of the Labor Party. They've been a traditional Ashkenazic party. So they're polling at 9 seats, 9 to 10. When they, a few weeks ago, they were down to the minimum threshold around 4 and 5 seats. And Avi Gabai did put on a beautiful election campaign to bring them back up to 9. Economics, to the left. They're in favor of distributing money to the needy and the poor, sort of like to a certain extent.
Like American liberalism, very much like they support a market economy with strong welfare programs. Exactly,
strong welfare programs. The conflict, they're totally in favor of a diplomatic process. Though it's interesting that in general, we see the Israeli public is trending to the right. The fact is that Netanyahu has been in power for 13 years. And in general, the polls are showing again this year, they tend towards the right in terms of the solution of the conflict. I think because of the wise men of Oslo, who came up with the disengagement and the Oslo process, which brought about thousands of dead Israelis in terror attacks. And by giving them land, it basically became launching pads. Every town that we gave them became launching pads of terrorism. I think the Israeli public in general is tired of that and trending away from that. And that's why the right keeps getting in.
Right. Historically, the Labor Party has been known for strongly supporting U.S.-led agreements and specifically having diplomatic agreements with foreign oversight.
And appeasement of our enemies.
Right.
Oh, so this is the union of right-wing parties. Again, I'm openly saying this is the party that I support. It's basically the religious Zionist party, what used to be called the National Religious Party. So they've joined together. There's 3 factions here that have joined this union. One is the Jewish Home Party. They're sort of like the religious, light, modern Orthodox people in Israel. And they're represented by Rabbi Rafi Peretz, who is actually more of a Torani and to the right, but he was chief rabbi of the IDF, Rafi Peretz. He was the head of a pre-military academy. He's a loved figure. The head of the faction who's really leading the pack here is Bezalel Smotrich. That's the Ichud Leumi, the National Union faction, and he's much more of a right. He's more of a right winger. They're very close to each other, but they've come together and united with the Otzma Yehudit party, which I think is translated as the Jewish Power Party, something like that. And they're the students of Rabbi Meir Kahane with a strong right-wing platform, so right-wing that they've alienated some of the. They are in the Otzma Yehudit is in the United Right, and they traditionally. Initially had supported a platform of expelling the Arabs from Israel, actually trucking them out, putting them on trucks, shipping them out. Now they've softened that stand a little bit. They don't openly talk about expelling Arabs from the land of Israel, but they are in favor of passing laws that would be much more rigid against the Arabs. And they are the most extreme right-wing faction. Again, I'm not calling names here extremists. I'm just saying on the political map, they are at the extreme right. So they've joined here, and that is such a touchy, this is an important point I'm about to make, that in the union of right-wing parties, people that are from the modern Orthodox were upset. What, I'm going to vote for a party that's going to put these right-wing crazies in that are students of Rabbi Kahane? So the 2 right-wing parties that came together, the modern Orthodox parties, the religious Zionist parties that came together with Otzma Yehudit said this is just a technical joining together. Because if we don't, we're not going to pass the minimum threshold. And the day after the elections, they're going to separate. So it'll be Rabbi Rafi Peretz and Bezalel Smotrich, who are the modern Orthodox religious Zionist parties, and they will no longer obligate the Otzma Yehudit party to be under their party discipline. That representative from the Otzma Yehudit party is Itamar Ben-Gvir, and he will be completely on his own and independent. United Torah Judaism is what's known as the ultra-Orthodox. I'm not sure if I like that translation, but the Haredi parties, the black hat Jews, and they're united. It's 2 parties because one represents the more Hasidic platform, Hasidic parties, the Hasidic Jews, and one represents the more Misnagdim. So they come together. They're polling at 7 seats. Their social platform is not entirely clear.
Basically, just to maintain the religious status quo.
Right. They have their main thing is Torah. Their involvement with the state is not so vigorous, and they want to make sure that their yeshivas are funded for. The state of Israel says we have an ideal of supporting Torah study. They want to make sure that there's allotments to that. We must say that Yaakov Litzman, who is the leader, he has been an excellent minister of health. He's done beautiful things in health. He's very popular, one of the most popular ministers for his for what he's done inside of the health ministry. So he is certainly active there. By the way, many of their constituents have mishpahot bruchot yeledim. They have families of 10, 11, 12 children. So they are in favor of welfare programs to support some of their poor and large families, definitely in favor of the welfare. Shas. Wow. The Shas party is the Sephardic. That's Jews that come from the Arab countries like Morocco, like Tunis, like Egypt. So they vote traditionally for the Shas party. Shas party started out in 1988 with many, many seats. And Aryeh Deri was the leader back then. Aryeh Deri went to jail. He was accused and found guilty found guilty, and he got out of jail and amazingly came back to lead the Shas party. So they're polling at 6 seats. Now let's talk about Aryeh Deri for a second, because this is information that I've told people, and they said, I didn't know that. Rabbi Aryeh Deri is a rabbi. He's a good person. He means well. However, in the 1992 elections, that's the elections that Yitzhak Rabin won and brought upon the Oslo Accords. Rabbi Aryeh Deri promised before the elections. He said in these words, we will never join a coalition with those people who eat non-kosher food, with those people who violate the Sabbath. Never will we sit with such people in a coalition. Right after the elections, Yitzhak Rabin was doing better, and Aryeh Deri went right into that coalition. And he said, well, we've made that promise. We didn't know the results of the elections would be this way. So had we known, we wouldn't have made that promise. Now, that's a statement of a politician. He joined the Yitzhak Rabin government. With his votes, he brought upon the Oslo Accords, brought upon the giving away of all these lands that we have, Area A, to the Arabs. The Palestinian Authority was established under the purview of and in the merit of Rabbi Aryeh Deri. So that's his past. I just want to mention one more thing, and that is that Uri Avineri, who is probably the most extreme leftist that you can possibly fathom in Israel. He passed away last year. He said when he interviewed Aryeh Deri back in the 1980s, he said Aryeh Deri was further left than he was. He said if there could be such a thing, he was further left than he was in terms of the appeasement to the Arabs. So he helped build up Aryeh Deri, Rabbi Aryeh Deri, as the leader of the Shas party, contributed a lot of time and effort, and was successful in doing that. So, by the way, Aryeh Deri does support Torah institutions. They have wonderful institutions. The Shas institutions are making a lot of children say Shema Yisrael in Israel, and that's why a lot of people vote for them. The New Right.
So the New Right is a new party. Naftali Bennett, who was once the leader of the Jewish Home, broke off and created the New Right, which is an attempt to distance himself from being just the representative of the religious Zionist, to create a coalition of sorts between right-wing, secular, and religious Jews, Zionists. So a big part of their platform is promoting cooperation between the secular and religious Jews, civil rights for minorities, to have a Jewish tradition and character of the state, but without coercion, whatever that means. And they strongly oppose the establishment of the Palestinian state, and they strongly support the nation-state law and maintain that Israel is the nation-state of only the Jewish people.
We can't mention the New Right without mentioning Ayelet Shaked, who is the current Minister of Justice and has done wonderful work. For some reason, the public very much likes Ayelet Shaked, and some of the public doesn't like Bennett. Bennett is very talented, an amazing speaker, especially in English, and very talented. For some reason, Ayelet seems to be more popular, to the point that in recent days, she's been leading the election commercials and the election campaign. Her picture has been there more, and she's also pretty attractive, so her picture does something as well. But I think because of her popularity, they've been putting her in the forefront more because they felt like they were getting not the amount of seats that they wanted. So Ayelet Shaked is there. She's done beautiful work in the Ministry of Justice, and Bennett has done amazing work in the Ministry of Education as well. He's the current education minister. But together, I think they will definitely get in. I certainly hope so. And they will be a major part of the coalition. Meretz.
So Meretz is traditionally considered to be just left of the Labor Party. The party leader is Tamar Zandberg, and they're polling at around 5 seats. They promote egalitarianism, LGBTQ rights, separation of religion and state, human rights for Palestinians. They strongly support the freezing construction of the settlements and implementing the two-state solution. And they promote a social democratic welfare state, and specifically fight the exploitation of workers. So they're similar to the way that it's more like slightly more radical left than of center.
In the Labor Party.
Yeah, than the Labor Party.
And Meretz, I would say that those of you who are familiar with the Haaretz newspaper, I think Haaretz newspaper, the editors are voters of Meretz. It seems to represent their ideology. So that, for some of you, may register as a point of identifying. Zehut, wow. Zehut is the surprise of the 2019 elections. In the first few months of the election campaign, it was not passing the minimum threshold. This is Moshe Feiglin, who is a firm right-wing supporter of the land of Israel. We say right in terms of the conflict with the Arabs. He wants to maintain all of Israel under Jewish sovereignty. Amazingly, he's been doing tremendous work on talk shows, and he has brought on the support of young people and intellectuals in an amazing way, to the point that he's now polling at about 6 seats. It looks like he's definitely going to get in. Now, what's the attraction to Moshe Feiglin? So he is saying, let's get the government out of our hair. Let's get the government to be small and just take out the trash and do its job, and let people decide for their own and formulate their own policy on what they want to do. Let's, for example, right now, there's billions of shekels every year goes towards public broadcasting on TV and radio. He says, cut that out. Why do we have to pay the government to do an inefficient job in running broadcast? In America, there's no station that's totally publicly funded, not even the national, not even NPR. Let's just have private radio, private TV, and save billions and billions of shekels of allowance there. I heard him asked on a talk show, well, he's a religious guy. So he was asked, what's your position in terms of public transportation on the Shabbat? And his answer was, I'm against public transportation at all. Why should the government be paid? Why should the government pay to move people around? Let's pull the government out of public transportation. Let some private companies, bus companies, form together and provide that service. If they want to drive on Shabbat, let them drive on Shabbat. If they don't. And everyone can make the decision who they want to be transported by.
So one huge draw, especially for young people, is the legalization of marijuana. He really brought that issue to the forefront, and a lot of politicians are getting on board with that now. So if any of his policies actually do get passed in Knesset, that is a likely one, and a lot of young people are very excited about that.
And I feel like that even if my personal policy may be against legalizing marijuana, when you consider how many states in America and in the United States and in Europe already have legalized it, recreational marijuana. So it seems inevitable that all of the U.S. will reach that. It seems inevitable that all of Europe will reach that. And it seems inevitable that the state of Israel will also reach that. So I think he is saying we will legalize marijuana. We're in favor of that. He believes it's a tremendous economic boost for Israel, which I believe is correct. And since it's going to happen anyway, let's just make it happen, and let's monitor it the way it should be monitored.
So I just want to say one more thing about Zehut that I think is very interesting personally. That they, as far as I know, they're really the only party that's talking about what to do with the Palestinian population, both being inside Israel's current borders and in the West Bank. And they're actually promoting a specific solution, which is to give Palestinians who want to stay in the land of Israel permanent residency after vowing loyalty to the state, but I really haven't heard that from many other parties, even thinking about what to do with the Palestinian population.
When Ketzaleh comes on shortly, we can talk more about ask more questions about the Zehut party, because they do have some wild card Knesset members down the list, not clear where their loyalties are. They're certainly not religious, some of them, so we can save that for later.
So this is the end of the parties that we're going through. We didn't go through all of the parties that are polling to pass the threshold just for lack of time. There are two Palestinian parties that we didn't do, and some that are on the threshold, on the
Right. Lieberman is on the threshold. There's a woman, the former defense minister, Orly Abu Kassis, the Gesher party. They're on the minimum threshold. It looks like they may not get in. She's sort of a breakoff from the Likud, but has left-wing leanings. She's very much in favor of welfare and supporting the weak links, the weak sector of the people of Israel. Okay, so now, just in general, we have a multi-party system in Israel, meaning that when I go to the elections on Tuesday morning, I plan to be there right first in the morning. I'm going to be voting not for a person, but for a party. And by my voting for the United Right Party, I'm in essence saying I favor Benjamin Netanyahu to be prime minister because he's the natural allegiance of the party that best represents my ideology. At the same time, I'm voting for parliamentarians. In the America, that would be the senators in the House of Representatives. And here in Israel, the Knesset members, I'm voting for Knesset members that are of the religious Zionist party and represent my leanings. But again, by doing that one ballot, I'm supporting the parliamentarians that are on that list and the prime minister that's most closely aligned ideologically, which is Bibi Netanyahu. So if you support Netanyahu, you don't have to necessarily vote the Likud. You can vote for parties that are right of the Likud.
Okay, so we also went through some of the platforms of the various relevant parties. If you have more questions or if you didn't feel like we went into them enough, please ask them in the chat and we'll get to it when we get to the Q&A.
And again, I'm Baruch Gordon from Beit El Institutions, and I'm on here with Sharona Eshet-Kohen, the online media director of Beit El Institutions. And shortly, we're going to be joined by former Knesset member and head of the Ichud Leumi party, Yaakov Ketzaleh Katz. And we're saving that, your questions, which you can type in already now for Yaakov Katz. And if you know him, please state your name. Questions about what directions you think Netanyahu will form a coalition with who, and any questions you have about various parties, the political process. Ketzaleh is a sought-after person, political figures today in Israel consult with him. He's a person of keen analysis, and we're going to have him for you shortly. But before we do that,
when we recap, we looked at some of the ways that party leaders frame their messages in various ways to increase their voters.
Right.
Okay. So the time has almost come for the live elections analysis with former member of Knesset, Ketzaleh. Before we get to that, in the meantime, if you can post your questions, that would be very helpful so we can record them and make sure that we get to them. For a couple minutes, we're just gonna, I just want to tell everyone a little bit about some of the email lists that we have at Beit El Institutions. Here we go. So we'll just go through this very quickly. Our first email list is Beit El Friends. We send out every 2 weeks an email with Israel news analysis, usually video, sometimes written. We have human interest stories of people who are associated with Beit El Institutions or who work here. We've covered some very fascinating lives and really interesting stories. And of course, we give updates about any projects that are going on at Beit El Institutions, anything cool that happened recently. We had some students from the Beit El IDF Prep Academy running the marathon that we covered. If you subscribe to this list, then you'll get sent a free copy of the top 12 family-friendly summer activities in and near Jerusalem in 2019. You can click on the button "Subscribe Now" on the right side, and if as you're going through you don't get a chance to click on those buttons, I'll also send you a link at the end where you can subscribe to all these lists.
So another list we have is the West Bank Jewish population stats. This is a project of Ketzaleh, who has contacts. These stats are not available to the public, and we make them available to the public. Ketzaleh has contacts in the population registry of the Interior Ministry, and you can get the exact number of Jews who live in Judea and Samaria, not counting the eastern neighborhoods of Jerusalem. This has been a shocker. I'm telling you, a real shocker to many left-wing people, to Arabs, to men of letters, publicists, who when they see these, they say, wow, that many Jews are there. That means that there's no chance for a two-state solution. And every month we track those publicists and men of letters who are ditching the two-state solution because of these numbers and now promoting a one-state solution or other solutions. This is the Arutz Sheva Daily Report. You can get on that at Arutz Sheva, IsraelNationalNews.com. It's probably one of the best in my opinion, coverage of Israel news, very pro-Judea and Samaria, pro-Jewish sovereignty over the entire land. And we're at this link to the right, which says subscribe now, you can there join the mobile and print version. If you don't need all the pictures and you just want like straight text, then join that list.
So the next two, we haven't launched yet, but you're still able to subscribe to them, and we should be launching in the next couple months. One is
weeks, maybe.
The top. The first is called Beyond the Foramot, and it's a weekly email with nationalist Torah insights and ideas. And if you subscribe to that, you'll get for free copy of Chapter 2 of the of Rav Kook's Art of Teshuvah with commentary by Rabbi David Sampson and Zvi Fishman.
In every list that you subscribe, there's a free gift that you get. The final list we want to promote is just videos, Israel videos, cool Israel videos. And again, you can click to the right and subscribe to that. So again, those of you who are looking to get on some email lists, all of you, I'm sure, don't get enough email. No, in all seriousness, these are fantastic lists. There are thousands of people on these lists, and we get tremendous feedback. Spread these, get on them, send them to your friends, because it's all good for the Jewish people.
Now, in the top of the chat, I'm going to post a link that's going to be stuck to the very top with a link that you can use to subscribe to any of those lists in case you missed any of those offers.
Great. Okay. So we're now going to move to the next stage of our live discussion here. Studio, former Knesset member Yaakov Katz, Ketzaleh, and we're opening it up to questions. And here's Ketzaleh with us. Ketzaleh, welcome to the live broadcast. There are literally hundreds of people right now listening to us, and many more will join later.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Sharona and Baruch. And it's a great evening in Israel. The weather is good. We got a lot of water in the past few months. So,
Katz, what kind of analysis do you see in the forthcoming elections?
Okay, so we have to remember that in Israel we have today close to 7.5 million Jews, another 1.6 million Arabs, including Druze. 5.8 million people have the right to vote on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday. And what happened in the past few elections, first of all, the right wing is winning time after time. And the amount of people which are voting, it's around 70%. We can say that among the national people, the religious people, the Haredi people, the people which continue to be ultra-Orthodox people, much more people are voting because we have something to lose. We're looking for making the state of Israel a state of Torah. We are trying to make the state of Israel a state with love to the Holy Land, which we got from God. We are trying to connect ourselves to the generation in the past and to take care of the generation in the future. So we are coming, many more people from our people running to the election. And I think that in this coming Tuesday, it looks to me that that despite the fact that Netanyahu is trying to tell people in order to push them to go to vote, and the other right wingers like Ichud Miflagot Hayamin, which is
the United Right Party,
or the
New
Right, or the Shas, or the Aguda, or Kachlon, or Lieberman. We are all trying to push our people to go and to come and to vote in this coming day, because we are trying to save the land. The other people, which are the leftists, which are voting, they voting in order to destroy something. So in order to destroy, you don't have the same energy as the people who have the feeling that we are voting for survive. And this is different between the people from Tel Aviv area, which unfortunately many of them, or most of them, voting to the leftist parties. Most of the people in Israel, especially the people who live in the suburb, in Jerusalem, in Bnei Brak, in the Yeshuvim, in the settlements, the cities, the towns in Judea and Samaria, in the Golan Heights, Tiberia, Tzfat, all other places, most of the people voting to the right wing. And I have no doubt that in the end of this election, which we will know the results Tuesday night, 10 o'clock at night, it will be a transit, but we will have the first feeling, the first knowing how many people voting to each one of the parties. My feeling it will be around 70 against 50.
Wow, 70 on the right-wing bloc against 50.
Today they're speaking about 66. The last polls, even that were which made by pollsters, which all of them belong to the.
So listen, Ketzaleh is predicting here something that's outrageous. That's very, very strong.
Yeah.
The polls are saying that the right-wing bloc will be around 65, 66.
66 to 54 or 63.
Right.
Or 40, 53. And I think it will be 72 because I think that Balad, which is an Arab Ram Balad, which is an Arab
party.
I don't like to call it Palestinian because I know that there is one state, one nation in Eretz Israel, is the Jewish people. So the Arabs, which live in the state of Israel, now, thank God, they are divided. Last time they ran all together, so they got 13 seats. But now, because they are divided, one will get around 7 or 6 or something like that, and the other one will be disappeared. This is according to many pollsters and many polls.
That they'll come in under the minimum threshold,
under the minimum threshold, and they will not get in. I think also Gesher Orly Levy, that she is the daughter, Abu Kassil, she is the daughter of David Levy, that he was very known Likud guy, and his son Jackie was a member of the Likud, but she went a lot to the left, and because of that, I think she's going to lose. On the other side, Lieberman with the Russians, most of his voters are people who came from Russia. And most of them are right-wingers. They love the state of Israel. They love Eretz Israel. They cannot understand how can we live in a narrow place, which can be 13 kilometers, 9 miles, and it's like a ghetto that we had in Moscow, in Bialystok, in Vilna, in Berlin,
so the
and in Warsaw.
They trend to vote right-wing.
Right-wing. So hopefully Lieberman will cross the minimum threshold, and Kachlan also will make it. The united right-wing parties will make it also, and the new right-wing, the new right party,
that's Bennett and Shaked.
Bennett and Shaked also will make it. So I think that altogether we will have close to 70, around 70 seats. And I'm not a prophet, but I think most of the people want to survive in Israel. And we see who are the people that we are surrounded by, and what kind of wars we had with them, and what kind of terrorists they produce and they brought to the world, and even though that most of the Jewish people love peace and for peace they're ready to give even the Fifth Avenue Show. They're ready to give up everything, because when the Jewish people hear the word peace, they're ready to give everything up. But even though that we have been experienced so many tragedies with the people that we are looking for making peace with them, and instead of getting peace, we are getting more and more people that have been killed, perished, and killed by them.
Just to sum up that point, you're saying when we did make the ultimate peace appeasement with the Oslo Accords, giving the Arabs the Palestinian Authority and self-rule and self-military rule, and the ultimate appeasement of disengagement from Gaza, destroying the Jewish homes in the area, and giving it turned into an onslaught of terrorist attacks.
Yes, so because so I would say that if the Arabs would be discovered as peace people who love peace, I'm afraid that the Jewish people are so naive, they would have been ready to give up, unfortunately, a lot. But thank God, HaKadosh Baruch Hu leads the world. God leads the world, and He leads it in the way that we see the truth, and they cannot overcome their nature of killing their daughters, they're killing their wife, they're beating their family, and no country, Arab country around us as a democratic regime. They are all controlled by dictators, which one subscribe the other one, and they're killing each other. And look what's happening today in Louvre. Look at what happened with
Louvre is Libya.
Libya. Look what happened in Egypt. Look what happened in Syria. Look what happened in Sudan today. Look what happened in the whole Arab world. They're killing each other. They cannot tolerate somebody who doesn't think like them, and they don't have any democracy. And places, they're going to Germany, and they're going to Denmark, and they're going to Netherlands, and they're going to France, and they're going to all over the places. Over there, they're also killing. They're also killing. Look what they did in Great Britain. And unfortunately, thank God, so we are very strong here, and people want to survive. And because of them, most of them voting for parties which representing a future life, not a future death.
So we have Sharona, maybe with some questions that have come in for. I'm Baruch Gordon. Next to me is Sharona Eshet-Kohen. We are from Beitel Institutions, and the CEO.
Ketzaleh is the former member of the Parliament and a future prime minister. Who knows if Trump did it, and Trump sent his good man David Friedman to Israel, and he's like Koresh. He's a good president, so we can.
Next elections, vote for Ketzaleh. So Sharona has taken in your good questions.
If you come to Israel, making if I will decide to run one day when I'll be 70, 80, or 90, vote for me.
So Sharona, why don't you move in and you give us some of these questions that have come in.
So this was a follow-up question. Who was it that said it? Ronald just asked, with the 70-seat block that's being predicted, sorry, who will they then in turn vote for prime minister?
Meaning what?
I assume who will be the leader of that block?
Netanyahu will go with.
Netanyahu will be the leader of that bloc because most all the parties which I mentioned, like Kahlon or Lieberman or Agudat Israel or Shas, the United Right parties, all of them declared and promised that they will recommend Bibi to be the one who will be the prime minister. So,
but a huge question, Katz, that's being floated is: after Netanyahu wins the elections and the president puts the task upon him of forming the coalition, will he go with these right-wing parties, or will he go with guns?
So I remember in my time that when I led the Ichud Leumi, and I supposed to be one of the ministers in his cabinet, and finally he went with Barak.
Meaning instead of going with the narrow right-wing coalition, he went with the Labour Party and formed a broad coalition.
It's a possibility, but I think it's a possibility that he will go with Gantz. But because he was taken to, he was not indicted, but he was
recommended
to be indicted, to be taken to a trial on 3 files. And in order to avoid it, he needs parties that, despite that facts, will recommend him to be prime minister, and they will make the agreement with him before they will go to the president, not after, because they learned from me. Because I trusted him, and he finally went with Barak. Netanyahu is a politician. He belongs to the right. But he first of all belongs to himself, and it's a possibility that if he will find himself strong enough, and he will not be tied by agreement
with the right-wing
parties, before they going to the president, with a big guarantee that he will stay with them. It's a chance that he will stay with them, but otherwise, we can find him with guns, dismantle the left-wing party like he did to the Labour Party, and dismantle it to 3 parties, because Kahol Lavan, it's a new party which made from few parties artificially,
right?
And they can be, and he has a goal and a target dismantle his opposition, his enemies.
So Katz is making here two very significant points. Number one, he's saying there's reasoning that Bibi will go with the right-wing parties because he's been recommended by the Attorney General to be on trial for 3 separate cases, and probably at least one of them he will actually go to trial. When he actually goes to trial, if his coalition partner is guns,
according to the law, to the Israeli law, prime minister it's different from a minister. He can stay in his position till the end of his trial.
To the end of the trial, till he's found guilty.
A simple minister, Derry, for instance, when he was taken to a trial, he had to resign. But he doesn't have to resign till the end. The opposition saying, on the moment they're taking you to a trial,
and that decision is made.
So you have by yourself, you have to resign because it's fitting.
Etiquette.
It's that the prime minister has to run the country and the state. In the same time, he has to be peers, to go to the court.
So you're saying that Gantz will be much quicker to bolt the coalition, to leave it once Bibi is charged in the court.
Absolutely.
Whereas the right-wing parties would say, you know what, we're willing to go with the law.
Because of that, I think you will go with the right parties. And we say in Hebrew, and Baruch will translate ביד to חודש הגאולה. We are living in a time of גאולה, and we are coming from חודש השמחה, חודש תודה. In order to be, we have to be בשמחה, we have to be happy, we have to rejoice. And this is the drinking other things. So from the simcha of Chodesh Adar, we are going to the Chodesh Geula, and the election is in Chodesh Geula, and probably the way that the Kadosh Baruch Hu made us nisim, miracles, when we were young, he will continue to make miracles when we got older a little bit.
It says the sound is breaking up. So.
Okay, so let's try and fix the sound here. Okay, I think we're back with better sound now.
Okay.
Sharona, how about another question?
Sure, yeah. So a lot of people have been asking about Zehut. So Joseph asked in general, can you speak about Zehut? But Sarah had 2 specific questions. The first being, would Zehut join a coalition with Bibi? And the second being, what about U.S. foreign aid? Zehut has valid points on it, according to Sarah, and she hasn't heard it addressed by other parties.
What is Zehut's points on foreign aid?
What are their points on foreign aid, and what are other parties saying on it, if they are?
I think he said, Feiglin, that we don't need foreign aid.
Right.
I think he says that we have to be independent. That if we're not, but Feiglin is a very special guy. First of all, he lives in Judea and Samaria. He's a settler, and he fought all his life for the Jewish people in Judea and Samaria. We have to know that. He was the one who made inside the revolution within the Likud party by bringing many from people, religious people, to be part of the party. It was only non-religious, and he made it. When he didn't succeed to get into the party last election, he decided to build a new party. I think that he, according to the all polls, is going to get in with between 4 to 6 seats. It's a possibility that all of a sudden he will not cross the minimum threshold because people saying one thing, and when they're coming to especially when Bibi now is crying for vote because he said if I will not get enough votes, I will not be prime minister, and most of his voters are right-wingers, so it's a possibility that many of them in the last moment will change their mind, will vote for him. But I assume that according to the pollsters, he's going to get between 4 to 6 seats, which is a tremendous amount of somebody that never had a party, and in one shot he getting so many. I think in the end of the day, despite the fact that he's playing the game because he has, let's say, 2 seats who come from left-wingers, he probably doesn't want to commit himself with whom he's going to be. But there's no question that after you'll be elected, you will join the Likud party because he's for building Beit HaMikdash, and I don't see anybody from Meretz or from the Labour Party of the Kahol Lavan, blue-white, are going to build Beit HaMikdash now. I don't see. And he's speaking about transferring the Arabs, and nobody from left-wing are going to transfer Arabs. He's talking about having the right to settle every place in Judea and Samaria, including Arab cities, and it's not going. I'm not going to. But we. I think Feiglin is a good boy, and he probably will be in. And even though he doesn't say with whom he will go, I think finally he will go with the Likud party, and he will be part of the right wing, and he probably will be a minister. And this is the game that he worked very hard by preparing his presentation differently from the other party who didn't
his
work.
Platform. He wrote out his whole platform.
The other playing with games, he worked very, he put a lot of time in order to write a book, and people are feeling that he behaves to them more seriously than other parties. Honestly. So if you're asking me, because you are not voting here in America, you are just asking questions.
Some people are for Israel.
Some people for Israel. So if they, it's a possibility that you will be elected, and I think that in the end of the day you will go with the right wing party, with the right wing parties. There's no question about that.
So what about, I have a specific question here, Ketzaleh, and that is, in the 1992 elections, Somit got in with a very right-wing leader, Rafi Eitan, former chief of staff, but his number 2 or 3 person was a weaker link, and he ended up bolting and joining with Yitzhak Rabin to bring about the Oslo. Does Franklin have some weak left-wing leaning people?
You have people in his party that nobody knows them, and that are very dangerous. And beside him and Rabbi Salem, which is also used to be part of Shas party, and we have to remember that Shas party were ready to give up all Judea and Samaria. So besides Feiglin, I don't see anybody that represents the right wing. And he thinks that he controls them, but he doesn't know that what's happening is that after they getting in, each one thinks that he's a king by himself. So if you ask me to whom to vote, I think I have another party that I'm recommending. But if you ask me if you'll be elected, it's a big chance that you'll bring in between 4 to 6. It's a possibility that all his votes that voted for him, if you will not cross the threshold, the minimum threshold, will be divided by the other parties.
Sharona, do we have some more questions?
Yeah. So it seems there's a little bit of uncertainty or confusion about how voting for a party that's further to the right than Likud wouldn't endanger Bibi from getting elected. So Hindi Kellerman asked how voting for United Right or the New Right might endanger Bibi from being elected. And Martin asked specifically, since Rivlin could choose the task leader based on who has the largest party, if voting for a right-wing party would mean that Gantz would be asked for.
Voting for a party right to Bibi, could that endanger the president not giving the task to Bibi?
No, if you will have 61 people which recommend Bibi, he has to give it to Bibi. He cannot give it to Gantz. Even Bibi will get 30, and Kahol Lavan will get 38. But the right wing bloc will be 62, 63, and all of them will say, we want Bibi to be the prime minister. He has to give it to Bibi. He cannot give it to the other. Bibi said, because he doesn't like the president, Rivlin. They don't like each other. They are very
rivals.
Yeah, you know,
political rivals.
Because when Rivlin wanted to be president, Bibi made all his efforts to stop him from being president. And despite the will of Bibi, Rivlin succeeded to be nominated and to be elected. So
they have grudges. They're holding grudges against each other.
Yeah, you know, they don't like each other. I put it in that way. I like Olaf Am Israel, so it's including both of them. And we have to love every Jew. We even love also going, because we have nothing against nobody. We just love. So we love. And if you're asking me what will happen if the right-wing parties will get more votes, and it will help to the bloc and to the recommended that Bibi will be recommended to be the one who leads the will be the prime minister. He will have much less than a Kahol Lavan Gantz.
So Miriam asks, can you address the differences between the New Right Party and the United Right Party? And voter specifically wants to know about their social and economic policies of the two.
Social and economic. Okay, I think the difference between the two parties, that the New Right party,
that's Bennett and Shaked,
which is not religious party. They represent nationalistic point of view, they are very right-wingers, and they're for Eretz Israel, and they proved it. And Shaked did unbelievable work, and Bennett also did a very good work as an education minister. He did a good job, and he's a firm guy. There's no question about it. But the party, most of the representatives are not religious, and the right-wing parties, which is the it's a religious part, Torah, the yeshivot is there, the yeshivot gvuot, the koilelim, the ulpenot,
all the Torah institutions.
So we are going, I think most of the religious people, most of them are going to vote to the united religious parties, because we think also about our children, grandchildren, and we want to be sure that they have a continuity. It's no difference between the two parts of the policy about Eretz Israel. Both of them fight for Eretz Israel, both of them. And Shaked did a very great job. I don't see, by the way, by no party, somebody who can continue what she did. She's very smart, and
she's also supportive of Torah institutions.
So I think that the point of Eretz Israel, a nationalistic point of view, both parties are very similar. If you're talking about Torah and other things, so the United Religious Parties are more Torah party. Social issues, you see, indifferent from failing that he brought all his ideas. They don't even speak about it. But being religious, we are behaving according to the Torah. And the Torah, it's full of love to the Anim and full of love to
poor people.
For instance, all Rafirer or most of the Chesed institutions,
charity institutions
have built by Haredi Welt or by our people, not by non-religious people. So you don't have to put it even in the vote, because it's automatically, it's part of the life of being religious, is to give to others, to be good. Matanot Levionim, Kimcha de Pischa. This is part of our life. You don't have to say that we are for Brit Milah. You don't have to say that we are for Shabbat, because everybody knows that we are for Shabbat and we are for Brit Milah. The same thing about Chasadim. Am Yisrael is Am Shel Chesed, Shel Netina. We are giving, we are doing, we are helping. So this is automatically, by being religious, automatically social affair. It's the top of our motives and goals when we coming to the public and we ask them to vote for, because they know that we will be involved in these points a lot.
Sure.
Okay, Hindi Kellerman asked another question about Feiglin. The funny one. She said, do you feel Feiglin's recent TV interview will help him get more votes? Specifically the one where he was behaving strangely, drinking whiskey, taking off his shoes and socks, massaging the interviewer's feet, and having the interviewer massage his feet.
Yeah, there are many youngsters, that they don't have enough mind in the box up, and when they're coming and seeing somebody playing with whiskey, with cannabis, with and that, young boys, 18 years old, 19 years old. This is most of these people they're voting for him. When will get older a little bit, they will vote, I believe, in 4 or 8 years differently. But he was smart enough.
There is a point that Feiglin is drawing the young vote
from
the left and the right.
For the right, because he was smart enough to speak about the right of, for instance, he said, we don't have to pay taxes, we don't have to do this. Everybody wants to smoke, allowed to smoke. Everybody wants to do this and other. Everybody wants. He said everything is free. Everything is free.
Free market,
free this, free that. So people love to hear it. He did a very smart campaign. And it's helping him to get some seats. It looks like that. unless all of a sudden, I don't know. But according to the polls, according to the last polls, he's going to be in with 5 to 6 seats, because the youngsters, the young boys, the young people who voting first time, they're always looking for a revolution. They want to be revolutionized. They want to change the world. And if somebody coming with a new flag of everything you want to do, you can do. Everything you want to drink, you can drink. Everything you want to smoke, you can smoke. So let's vote for Feiglin and make the world free. And like in the time of the 60s, when the hippies took us to Denver, where was it? Woodstock, smoking and drinking and singing. It took a few years to understand that it was a distraction. But Feiglin, hopefully, he's playing with everybody. I'm not sure about the people behind it. He's a politician, so he knows what he wants. So I trust him personally that he will be to the right. He's a firm guy. He lives in Carnation One. But the people behind him, each one is a character, and you never know in what way, when they will get in what way they will behave.
Ketzaleh, you spoke beforehand about the social policies of the United Right, which is Smotrich, and Bennett and Shaked.
What about which is Rabbi
Rafi Peretz and
Smotrich?
But, right. But the question is, what about economic policies? It seems like both parties would tend towards capitalism and not socialism.
Yes.
But are there specific differences that they're talking about?
I think that most of the people understand today that we have to be like America, with open market, and not to be like it was in the beginning of the first year of the country, of the state, when most of the people were socialists, because it was looked like more idealistic way to join. To be like but we see even in Europe, most of the states are getting off the social life because they understand there's no future. So we see it in Germany, we see it in France, we see it in all over the countries that the people don't want to, they cannot survive with a social life and the destruction. And you see America is flourishing, the United States of America, and even Trump now because of some progressive people in the Democrat Party, like Sanders, against the Jewish guy, but he looks like a communist guy, like he was taken out from the pocket of Stalin, and he's speaking in the way of being a very, very socialist. Socialist, I would not say communist, but almost on the boundary of being communist, and he looks like that. And you see Trump that is speaking about free market, capitalism, giving each one to work according to. Most of the Israelis like that way. And by the way, in Kahol Lavan, in blue and white, led by the four generals,
Gantz and
Lapid and this and that and this and that, they're speaking about stopping getting out the gas from the ground. With Nobel Energy, it means to destroy the country.
Meaning Israel has discovered natural gas underwater, under the sea, and the Likud party has given that to a private company.
They've been tortured till they got the permission to do it, because the all leftists made so many problems in order to stop getting gas out from the. They were against Derech Shesh 6.
Yes, so Israel has become an energy provider, and there's a huge argument. The socialist leading parties, like the Labor Party, they're saying that should be monitored. They shouldn't be allowed to make so much money. The company that invested hundreds of millions in trying to find the gas. And the Likud is saying, no, we have to have a capitalist market. Let them do it. They'll do it better. Yeah. I think Sharona has some other questions. Y'all are asking excellent questions. Keep them coming in.
So, well, we're getting to be about 9:30. So we might just have time for a couple more. But if we don't address your question, you can feel free to email us. And one of us will definitely be able to answer your email. But I guess just at least one more question. Let's see. I guess William says he's afraid
William is one who asks many questions.
William's a curious guy. He's afraid Bibi will ask blue and white to form a unity government, and then he won't need the right-wing party. So maybe you could just elaborate on that again.
And just again, we're here with former Knesset Member Yaakov Ketzaleh Katz in Beitel Institutions giving election analysis. If you missed the first part of our program, we discussed the election system and the stark differences between the voting system in the U.S. and how it works in Israel. You'll get that in a link in the replay. So Ketzaleh, go ahead.
I think that normally we had to worry about his decision with whom to go. In that case, I think on Wednesday,
Count the votes.
When he will be the one who will be recommended to be prime minister, he has no choice only to go with the right wing because the fact that he has to be to
stay in trial,
to try in trial in 3 files, which one of them speaking about bribing, and none of the left parties will join him in this matter.
If he's charged, they won't stay with him.
Because of that, he will be taking only the parties which want that he can trust them, that they will stay with him even
if he's charged.
If he's charged, and he will have to go to the court, they will stay with him till the end of the story. So this is something that I think in that case he will go with the right-wing parties and not with Katz.
I want to add something to that and get your input on this, because it could be that people say, even though I might be charged, I'll go with Gantz, and then Trump will introduce his deal of the century, and I will adopt that. Bibi will pursue that with such vigor that the prosecution, the Praklitut, they will leave me alone because they'll see, hey,
all the
leftists will say, hey, Bibi is now supporting appeasement, reaching an agreement with the Arabs. So let's.
Is giving that I'm not worried about. It's giving so people are worried about that. I think the patient, otherwise, I was needed to me. When I was ahead of the agreement with him, and in the last moment he went with Baruch, divided the Labour Party very smartly, but he didn't allow us to be part of the government and to do the right thing that we had to do.
Just to play up on that point, Ketzaleh is saying that by going with the left party, for instance, Gantz and Lapid, what Bibi will successfully do is divide and conquer that party, because elements of the party will say, let's stay with the government and let's stay with Bibi in order to divide and conquer. So that there will be elements of Gantz's party that will say, let's keep the power that's given us. We'll get some good portfolios and ministerial positions, and let's stay with Bibi. And others will say, Bibi? We're not going to stay with Bibi. And he'll divide that party and destroy them. And that's what Bibi loves to do. And he's done it successfully in the past.
Just as a quick follow-up, Ronald just asked if he is charged and found guilty, who becomes the next prime minister? How does that work?
I'm going to be the next one.
Here he is, ladies and gentlemen. When Bibi goes down.
You know, the saying that the Lubavitcher Rebbe said that after Bibi, Mashiach will come. I cannot be Mashiach because I am a Cohen. So probably Baruch.
Right.
You know, we never know. It can be Sar, it can be Katz. Don't worry. But I can assure that we will find somebody to replace him.
So I think we have one final question.
Yeah, I just want to end on this because it's related to Judea and Samaria, which I think we're all interested in. Voter said both Feiglin and Smotrich have suggested that Palestinians want to leave the West Bank. And is there public data supporting that? And on a related note, David said, whatever happened to this idea of Trump's suggestion of a federation between Jordan and Palestine?
Okay, I think that we are, the Jewish people, are not allowed to. We have to know, by the way, that many Arabs leave the country. They leave Gaza Strip to Turkey and to other places. 6 of the people who have been murdered in New Zealand were Arabs from Gaza Strip. They're leaving. Egypt opening the door of the gate. Jordanian opened the gate, and every year they're speaking about tens of 10,000 people are leaving. We are, as the Jewish people, we are not allowed to talk about something like that because it's not fitting to our nature. And because of that, people cannot digest it and cannot swallow the idea of transferring people,
of expelling
people. It's not the way that, so anybody who's speaking about that, it looks like...
he was asking, is it true that Palestinians want to leave from Gaza and from do Palestinians want to leave the country given the opportunity?
We have to give them even,
open the doors, encourage them.
Yeah. By the way, but in Israel, everything, the doors are open to come and to live. If Jewish people want to come, they're allowed to come. If Arabs wants to live, they're allowed to live.
Not from Gaza.
Not from Gaza. The truth is, miraculously, I don't know how to say the word all the way, he's correcting me. We have today 7.5 million Jews, 7 million Jews, and 500,000 million that consider themselves Jewish as the people who came from Russia. But 7.5 million in Israel, it's a miracle by itself. And the Arabs are becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. We are becoming bigger and bigger. The Jewish mother has more kids than the Arab mother has today in Israel. And this is because of the Haredi mothers that are very good, 10, 15, 12, 13 kids. The settler mothers, they bring a lot of kids. We are the Jewish people making a revolution by ourselves. Even the non-religious people in Israel, the Jewish people, having much more children than the Western
society
in Europe or in America and all over the world. So some miracles happening over here. I don't think that we have to put a flag of transferring. It's not work like that. Nobody will accept it. So we say it in Hebrew, כשם שמצווה לומר דברים הנשמעים, כך מצווה שלא לומר דברים שאינם נשמעים.
Meaning just like it's a good thing not to say things that can't be digested, it's also a mitzvah to say things that can be digested. So Ketzaleh feels like talking about forcible transfer of Arabs out of the country is not something to be put on the table because it won't pass.
It's not working. So we have to do that. We have to do all our efforts to convince you and others from the 5 towns, from Brooklyn, from Flatbush, from Borough Park to make Aliyah to Eretz Israel. Like my mother always used to tell me, Yaakov, tell the Jewish people in America that when you meet them, that in order to get to Gan Eden, you don't have to die. Come to Eretz Israel, you get Gan Eden in your life.
Gan Eden is heaven. In order to reach the Garden of Eden.
If you want to get Gan Eden in your life, come to Eretz Israel. You don't have to die to get to Gan Eden. Come to Eretz Israel, you'll get Gan Eden in your life.
So I think we're wrapping it up. And we want to thank you for joining this webinar. And we may be having another webinar after the election. So keep posted and listen up. I'm Baruch Gordon, Director of Development for Beit-El Institutions. Next to me is the CEO of Beit-El Institutions and former Knesset Member Yaakov Katz, who's given his analysis. And of course, our online media director, Sharona Eshet-Kohen. Thank you all. Remember, to the right, there's going to be a link to join our email lists.
It's already there.
It's already there. There's literally thousands of people are on these lists. Don't miss out. There's 5 lists to choose from political analysis to a Torah list to getting just 2 videos, cool videos every day. Thank you all for joining us. Y'all come back now.